This is going to sound ridiculous at first, but did you know that stopping porn and other compulsive sexual behaviors can actually make your life worse? At least temporarily? I'm going to explain why that happens and how to overcome it. But first, I want to start with a client story. We'll call him Chris, okay? So 70% of our clients come to us from other treatment programs, traditional CSATs, 12-step meetings, traditional counseling and therapy. And when Chris came to me, he joined my group coaching program. And in the onboarding that we had, I either didn't ask the right questions or Chris was doing a really good job around suppressing the actual distress that he was under. But 3 weeks into the program, and he's actually getting worse, thank God he shared it with us, this guy was an absolute mess. He was on the brink of crisis. He was losing his mind. This is someone who needed local medical attention. Why was he losing his mind? He's losing his mind because he was in a sobriety-centric program. And obviously that's the goal, but that is the outcome. That is the result. All he did was stop using porn. And guess what? It was his primary coping strategy since he was a child. His compulsive sexual behavior he used to numb, cope, escape, emotionally regulate. It was the glue holding all the pieces together. And when all he did was remove the coping strategy, he got worse. He got to a place where he was on the brink of being hospitalized. So we made sure we got him the local medical help. He saw a psychiatrist or psychologist. I don't remember exactly who he saw. He stabilized. And when he came back into the program, we said, stop worrying about the porn. Now, listen, I know that sounds ridiculous, and I know that's a difficult pill to swallow. Chris was a man of faith. But the reality was he wasn't setting attainable goals. You can't break a habit if you don't make new habits that meet the right needs. I see clients like Chris all the time. Their obsession with sobriety, the intense focus on sobriety without addressing the underlying issues, leave clients without a coping strategy. And in some cases, that can be dangerous. Literally dangerous. 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 You needed to take the porn off the table. Let's address that later. Let's first stabilize. Let's get you taking care of yourself a teeny tiny bit better. Maybe there's a medication that can regulate the acute anxiety that literally almost drove him insane. Now, that's not a solution for everybody, but it was a solution for him. This cycle of setting goals that aren't attainable leads to failure, depression, and hopelessness. For some men, abstinence is the path. For a lot of guys, it's harm reduction. And the greater the underlying mental health issues and the childhood trauma, the greater the chance that harm reduction is the right approach for you. And the reason for that, because setting goals that aren't attainable is foolish. I'm never going to do it again. Well, why aren't you ever going to do it again? Is your wife's anger and hurt and pain sufficient to drive compliance for the rest of your life? It is not. Can the deep shame that you experienced after getting caught drive compliance for the rest of your life? No. No, this habit is ridiculously hard to break. Listen to me. Please listen to me. Ridiculously hard. And let me tell you why it's ridiculously hard. Number one, how many times have you used PMO to numb, cope, and escape discomfort? To get a release, to get a reward? How many times? I have had clients calculate that frequency. thousands of times. So this is a lifetime use of using porn to alleviate discomfort and pain as a coping strategy. The repetitions, the frequency in which this event occurred. I had one client say recently, it hit him like a light bulb, or light bulb popped up in his head, where he realized that he PMO'd more times than he brushed his teeth. Another client realized that he did this more than he rode a bicycle. I invite everyone listening to this podcast right now to calculate the frequency, how often this happened. So, we've been using porn to escape discomfort since we were children. We have done it thousands of times. Some of us getting close to 10,000. Do the math. Do the math. And not only have we been doing it since we were children, we have attached shame and secrecy to it since we were children. It's not just the doing it, it's the lying about it. That goes back really, really far. Okay, doing it since children, done it 1,000 times, lying about it since we were children, and all of this sits on top of a natural biological wiring that we men have for visual stimulation and variety. We are wired to be stimulated visually, and we are wired for variety. That is underneath, and on top of that is that lifetime use, high frequency, and shame that started in childhood. You're not just fighting a habit or an addiction, you're fighting biology, history, and the silence that keeps this addiction alive. And the reason why this addiction stays alive, because it is doing something for you. This isn't just a bad habit or an addiction. Your PMO is meeting very important needs. Let me share with you a few golden rules of behavior modification. Number one, all behavior is need-seeking behavior. Number two, to break a habit, you have to make the right habits that meets the right needs. So let's explore some of those emotional, physiological, and physical needs that porn, masturbation, orgasm, PMO fulfills. Number one, the obvious, it helps you deal with stress and anxiety. Let's unpack that for a second. Do you mean that you have been using sexual activity to manage stress and anxiety, also known as fear? That's what stress and anxiety is, modern words for fear. Fear, when you look at us at our root, almost at a cellular level, pain, fear, pleasure. So you're using one of the most powerful forces in human nature to deal with stress and anxiety, and it is very effective, short term, to deal with stress and anxiety. Everybody knows you want to practice mindfulness. When you're doing that, when you're in that tunnel, that's mindful. You are doing that to the exclusion of all else. That's how powerful and that's how effective it is. Not only is it helping you deal with stress and anxiety, it's a reward. That PMO is a sense of autonomy and freedom. This has been our little secret, like the ring in Lord of the Rings. It is our precious. It's ours. It's what we do when no one's looking. It's what we do for us. It gives us a reward, a sense of autonomy, and think Mel Gibson in Braveheart, freedom. Stress and anxiety, a reward and sense of autonomy and freedom. And if you're doing the chitty chatty and talking with other people, and you're maybe using an AI bot to get off, or you're on the camming, or you're talking to a real person. Oh, so now you're using it for significance. Make you feel good about yourself, getting attention, a charge. Holy moly, this behavior is meeting some ridiculously important needs. It's absolutely insane when you start to unpack, and you must unpack the needs that this behavior is meeting, Why? To break a habit, you have to make the right habit that meets the right needs. But wait, there's more. Not just stress and anxiety, not just a reward, sense of autonomy and freedom, not just significance and attention or connection. If you're traveling down that route, it is an escape. It is a release, a moment of fun, of selfishness, of excitement, offering you, giving you something to look forward to when you are stressed. That's a lot. That's a lot. Here's the lesson that you have to know. Right. And so what happened? Well, before I get to the lesson, you remove that coping strategy. You think your life gets better? I thought I was supposed to be free and my light would shine bright and everything would work for me. No. Yes. Yes, that obviously, right? That's what we're going towards. But we cannot ignore the reality that we are removing our primary numbing, coping, and escaping strategy, and now we got nothing. And removing that strategy is so harmful for some men, they end up being hospitalized in a mental health crisis. Because that behavior, that coping strategy was the glue holding it all together. Now, I know everyone listening is not in that dark space, not in that place. Oh, if I stop doing it, I'm going to end up hospitalized because I'm going to lose my mind. But some of you are. Some of you are. And we're all on a spectrum. We may not be that, but maybe we're pretty close. This has been our thing since we were children. Let me tell you about Joe. Joe is one of my best clients, and I love him very much. Hi, Joe. That's not his name. This is a guy who's been sober for years. This is a guy who's spoken in front of tens of thousands of people. This guy is a leader in the program, doing really, really well. Guess what happens? There's a medical scare with someone very close to him has a medical scare. They have to go get, this person that he loves and cares about has to go get tests. He's scared. He's afraid of losing someone near and dear to him. He doesn't have his coping strategy. Guess what happened? For the first time in his life, he starts having panic attacks. And that was the kind of a bit of a joke. And I hear this joke often. Craig, in my mind, I think, Goodfellas, like, Craig, oh, wow, man. Thanks for the results, right? The sarcasm. I stopped doing the thing, and now I'm having panic attacks. Wow, this is wonderful. I'm so proud of myself. Without his coping strategy, he had never gone through this before. This was traumatic for him. And as a result of that trauma, he started having panic attacks. Now, he had the tools, he reached out right away, he did everything that he was supposed to do, but you need to know this. This work, obviously, let me make an obvious statement first as a parallel to give you a framework to think about it. Obviously, when you exercise and take good care of yourself and eat well and do all the things you're supposed to do, does that eliminate the chance of future medical problems? It absolutely does not. This work that you're doing on yourself mentally, now, just a quick footnote, remember, mental is physical, physical is mental. Where's your brain and your physical body? When you get triggered, that is a physiological reaction. You are dysregulated central nervous system. Right, that's in your body. So just want to put that out there. Just like this work doesn't physical activity immunize you from future medical challenges, this work, the working on yourself, living your purpose, doing what you need to do to be successful and live your best life, that does not immunize you from future mental health struggles. In fact, I live in a reality where I know that my worst triggers are ahead of me. Now, I'm going to be prepared for those triggers, but life is hard. I shared recently about someone close to me killing themselves. Now, We lost touch. It's been a while since we talked. I've been meaning to reach out. I didn't reach out. I was in a hole. I had ridiculous thoughts. Put on a disguise, go to the strip club, rent a car, go to this place, go to this place, go to the bookstore. No one will recognize you. Crazy thoughts. People think that working on themselves immunizes them from future triggers. That is foolish. Do you not think that you're going to experience a challenge in your life where you are not going to be triggered to numb, cope, and escape? Your biggest challenges are ahead of you. Of course, these parts are going to awaken. That's what they do. And that's critical why I teach clients how to lead those parts to create positive outcomes. If you're not doing parts work, I don't know what you're doing. I can't fathom being successful without having an acute awareness of the different parts of me that hijack agency and control when I get triggered. The addict part, liar, sabotage, resentment, anger. All of these parts are meeting needs, and no matter what you do, no matter how long you sit in those weekly sessions and talk about your feelings and talk about your past and talk about your traumas, I don't care if you go as deep as you could possibly go. Here's one of the other important lessons that I've learned. 13 years. By the way, this week, brothers and sisters who are listening, we are celebrating our 13th year in business. So proud. Thank you for being along for this journey. It has been a great privilege, and I know I have so many people listening, and it just warms my heart that you're listening to this and hopefully taking notes and hoping that you're getting value. You have to learn to lead these parts because no amount of therapy is going to prevent the reality that these parts are going to awaken. You're never going to be triggered to lie again. You're never going to get angry. You're never going to feel resentful. These are parts of life. Now, yes, good news, taking care of yourself, tapping into your purpose, having community, learning distress tolerance skills, managing your parts, thank goodness, reduces the frequency of those triggering events and the severity of those triggering events, but they have been reduced in frequency and severity because you're better able to manage them. Your triggers are biologically hardwired. Your thoughts aren't going away. These parts get retrained, they get new jobs. And I'll talk about that in another podcast. But think about, you don't have to think about yourself. You are removing a coping strategy that has been meeting these powerful needs since childhood. Imagine taking away the one thing that you've relied on to deal with life's toughest moments and not having anything else to lean on. That's what happens when PMO is removed without addressing the underlying issues and without creating continuous improvement. Learning from your mistakes, building an identity of someone, a man of integrity, a man who proactively manages stress and he gets good sleep. He eats well. He does all these things because he loves himself. He's coming at this from a place of strength. Without the right tools, you are vulnerable to anxiety, stress, emotional upheaval, crisis, depression. That's hard, brothers. And for the partners listening, two things can coexist. His behavior has caused you great and tremendous pain, and he has been using this vehicle, this method, like medication, and he's addicted to that medication since he was a child. This isn't anything new. He has done this thousands of times, thousands of times. Now, that's not an excuse to not do anything about it. That's not an excuse to appreciate the impact that this oldest and most impactful habit, doing it and lying about it, has on our lives. We are using one of the most powerful forces in human nature. Look how sex is used to sell us things. Trillions of dollars have been spent over the years using sex to get us to buy crap we don't need. If you don't have tools and you don't have a framework for managing these parts and you're not taking care of yourself, you are doomed. You are not going to be prepared for that moment. I don't care how much sobriety you have. And in celebration of our 13th year anniversary, one of the statements that just grows in truth and accuracy for me, sobriety is less than 10% of the solution. Another way of saying that is sobriety is the result. It's the output of creating a great life for yourself. So let's talk about how do you be successful, okay? And I want to be quick. I want to have an overview. Take notes. This is important. What are the pillars of long-term success? Number one, you have to learn self-control, not just learn it, master it. You have to become a master of managing your triggers and managing your thoughts and managing the actions that follow. That means you must have a deep understanding of the habit cycle. Trigger, thought, action, or cue, routine, reward, from the power of habit and Atomic Habits. If you haven't read Atomic Habits, the link's below. Get that book. I didn't write it. James Clear did. It is the best book on habits. You have developed a mastery of emotional regulation. And that means that you proactively manage anxiety and stress. You have tools and practices to stay ahead of these emotional challenges. There's no life, there's no future successful you where you don't have more anxiety and stress. I am so proud of what we accomplished, but sometimes Michelle and I have this fleeting fantasy of what it was like, the two of us recording videos in the closet, figuring it out all on our own, doing the podcast, editing the website, editing the videos, posting on social media. I don't have less anxiety and stress. I have more. I have people that depend on me. More people that depend on me than ever before. So when you're successful, do you have less stress or more, but you're better able to manage it? Number three, you have to learn what your needs are, and you have to learn how to articulate those needs in your relationships. The arc of results. Remember this. How many men listening are afraid to be honest with their wives? Every brother listening right now, if you're not driving, put up your hand if you are afraid to be honest with your wives. Well, if needs get met reactively or they get met proactively, then you got to address that. And we're a little bit behind the eight ball here, guys. We weren't trained to meet our needs. In fact, we think about needs, being proactive about meeting our needs. You might have a voice in your head saying, get the fuck out of here with that pussy shit. That's not very constructive, is it? If we're going to define masculinity as brave and courageous, being vulnerable is brave and courageous. Feeling is brave and courageous. Embracing the full tapestry and texture of our reality, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Being able to speak truth to our partners. But what happens? Guys get caught. Happy wife, happy life. Let me shut my mouth. Let me not speak my truth. Yes, dear, whatever you say, dear. What that does is that breeds resentment. The greater the resentment, the greater the chance of you acting out. Certain guarantee that you are going to be miserable. The greater the resentment, the greater the chance of you acting out. Think of the justifications that you have to justify your behavior. I deserve it. Oh, she's a bitch. She doesn't do this. She doesn't do that. Well, leave if you don't like it. Own your choice to stay. Figure it out. Make it work. Love her. Support her. Recognize that whatever anger and vitriol is coming towards you is because she is so wounded. She is so hurt. She thought 2 plus 2 was 4. She thought the sun rose in the east and sets in the west. She thought her husband was being honest and that she was the recipient of that sexual energy. And to come to find out, oh my God, it's been going here? I can't compete with that. I'm not good enough. Make her feel good enough and learn to be honest in your relationship. One great communication tool, which will be the subject of another podcast, is nonviolent communication. Go on YouTube, type that in. There's a couple of primer videos up top. Watch those videos. This communication tool is epic and awesome. And Marshall Rosenberg wrote a wonderful book that I also highly recommend. It's a little dense, yet it's, very, very important stuff. Number 4, you have to learn to manage conflict effectively. There is no such thing as a relationship without conflict. There is no such thing as a life without conflict. But what happens? How do we respond to conflict? How are we trained to respond to conflict? Well, we numb, cope, and escape from it. We hate it. But if it is part of our reality like gravity, you need skills to navigate disagreements and challenges. In the group coaching program or my core training program, you get the exact exercise that addresses this. It is called the emotional safety exercise, one of the most important exercises that Michelle and I ever came up with. That exercise helps you. So safety means the opposite of dysregulation. Grounded, connected, safe. Not in fight, flight, or freeze mode. Or fawn mode. People pleasing. Yes, dear. Whatever you say, dear. Right? That's a form of fear. These are versions of fear. And in the emotional safety exercise, you identify where's their safety so we can build on it, and where it's not, where there is conflict specifically, narrow focus. Because we're creatures of habit, it feels like there's chaos all over the place. There's not. You're primarily having conflict around 3 major issues. Rarely do I see it go to 4. Rarely does it go to 3 major. If at least with the 80-20 rule, if we address those 3 major areas of conflict, the patterns, the family of origin, the attachment styles, the parts that awaken, the dysregulation that occurs, if we can bring value there, well, that bleeds over into other areas. And not only did you get a once and done, but you've now got a framework to manage conflict going forward. If you don't have a framework for managing conflict, if you don't have this safety plan in your relationship, here's what we commit to doing. Because one of the realities is, for a lot of guys listening to this lesson right now, is you're hypersensitive. No, I'm not. I'm a big, strong man. Well, why you get so defensive? Why wouldn't she ask you, hey, where you going? Well, where am I going? Don't control me. You can't tell me what to do. Right? And you may not be hypersensitive at work, but my successful clients, big, big, big on the outside, small on the inside, insignificant at home, not good enough at home. No vehicle for communicating their needs. They are unsafe. So not only is your partner's safety, obviously emotional safety, obviously if there's physical unsafety, you got to separate ASAP because that's dangerous, and who the hell wants the authorities involved? And that's clearly a sign that you need help, by the way. If there's physical domestic violence, right? That's a clear sign that, hey, I need help immediately. I'm breaking the law. Now, that's only a tiny fraction of the clients that I work with, but we help those guys and partners too. And sometimes the physical violence is going from partner to husband. Right? So just a note on that: separate immediately. Create that space. What we're often talking about is emotional safety. If conflict is going to be the source of divorce, well, we better have a plan to do something about it. Don't you think you need to be aware acutely of exactly when you're dysregulated, what the triggers are, what the thoughts are, how it feels in your body when that happens, and take it a step further, what part is awakened, you need to know that. You need to know that. And if you're going to be happy and healthy in your relationship, your partner needs to know that. That's the emotional safety plan. Critical. Absolutely critical. So let me continue because I'm going to keep going off on tangents. The pillars for long-term success: sexual health, not sobriety. Sobriety is a stepping stone. Look, I'm a tenth of the way there. I'm a tenth of the way towards sexual health. Sexual health with integrity, fun, exciting, titillating, connecting. And I know that means different things for everyone else, but please make as your goal, cross sobriety off the list, or acknowledge that's a stepping stone, because you can't stay sober if you are an unhealthy sexual man. If you haven't healed that trauma, that shame, those wounds, and that energy isn't flowing in a healthy, constructive way, what do you think's going to happen? You must prioritize sexual health. I talked about restoring trust in your relationship. The emotional safety exercise is the vehicle to do that, but that is mandatory. This crisis in your relationship, just to borrow a professional analogy, has to be the crucible moment, the pivot. The relationship must get better. I have never seen a relationship survive the pain of sex addiction and porn addiction if the couple did not make it better. This exposes the vulnerabilities, exposes the shame, exposes the disconnect. It's all out there. You got to make lemonade. You got to make lemonade. Last thing I want to say is really important statement. Chapter 1 of the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. You must create sustainability by paying attention to your systems. Let me share with you the quote. We do not rise to the level of our goals. We fall to the level of our systems. So my businessmen listening to this podcast right now, you probably know a thing or two about change management. What about change management? Is it easy or is it hard? Organizational change. Even the slightest little itty bitty process that you want to change in your organization requires considerable effort because we're creatures of habit. Same for business, same for ourselves. Think of what you know about change management. Think about what you know about risk management. Think about what you know about systems. You know it takes systems to deliver the output that you're responsible for. Systems, policies and procedures, protocols, metrics. We need accountability. You can't be successful without accountability. Part of your system must be accountability. You can't trust your best employee to be great all the time. What happens without accountability? Professionally. I want you to imagine right now, in your place of work, you've eliminated accountability. It's all gone. Bye-bye. No more accountability. I trust everyone to do the right thing the way I need them to do it. I know you guys will figure it out. That's preposterous, right? Accountability is a system. Faith can be a system. Self-care, self-control, self-esteem. There's a number of different ways to break down buckets that you need to pay attention to. What systems in your life are necessary in order for you to be successful long term? And everybody has different systems, but I'll just share with you a quick outline of the ones that I think are important, or at least must be on your list for consideration. Direction and purpose is a system. Where do you want to go? Where do you want to go? Why do you want to get there? If you don't know your why, you're going to feel like you emotionally die. And then the why where are you going? What direction do you want to go? So direction and purpose, system one. Risk management. You can't run a successful business without risk management. You need someone paying attention to the pitfalls, making sure they don't happen, making sure there's a plan in place if it does happen to mitigate the risk, right? You know that, right? Self-control might be a system. Controlling yourself. There's a lot that goes into that. Mindfulness, distress tolerance skills, parts work, emotional regulation, healing childhood trauma. There's levels to this. So that's another system. Self-leadership may be another system for you. How are you managing the team? Not the external team, your family, work, community, faith. No, the internal team, your parts. Self-leadership, in fact, is one of the most important systems. And every one of my clients, I want them focusing on that. Like leading your parts is a thing. There are things that you can do to lead those parts to better outcomes. Understanding the triggers that awaken them, the thoughts that they have, the job that they're doing, the fears, what would happen if I stop doing my job? The liar says, you can't stop doing I can't stop doing my job. If I stop lying, I'm going to be abandoned. I'm going to be rejected. People are going to think less of me. Well, that's already happening, liar. It's not working. You have to learn to lead these parts. That's self-leadership. You have to feel good about yourself, self-esteem. You got to work on that. If you don't feel good about yourself, then it ain't going to work. Like there's a hole that you got to fill. Worthless to I have worth, I have value. I treat myself, I speak to myself, or treat myself the way I want the people I love to treat themselves. I feel about myself the way I want people I love and care about and lead to feel about themselves. Do you want them driving from a place of shame? No. So self-esteem is a system, as is accountability. What accountability do you have on the make a habit part of the equation? I had none. Right? I don't care how committed you are. You need accountability on the make a habit part of the equation. Do you need it in business? You need it professionally, you need it personally. So another system might be connection in relationships. You may have a work stream, a focus on how well am I connecting, particularly with my spouse, my children, people that love me, people that depend on me. The opposite of addiction isn't sobriety. It's what? Say it with me. Connection. Mindfulness may be a system for you. It may be so important to you as it is for me. I got to pay attention to this. I got to make sure that I'm practicing mindfulness, or you could lump it in with self-care. So I'm not telling you what to do. I'm giving you inspiration so you can figure out what works for you, because different people respond to different things. Faith may be an important system to you. People who regularly practice their faith have better life outcomes. Right? Are you just showing up, or are you feeling it? Gratitude may be another system. And of course, healthy sexuality is another system. All right? And there's a number of other ways to position this, but just the assignment for you listening, what are the buckets? What are the categories that I need to pay attention to? If I'm looking down at my life 10,000 feet, right? There's the day-to-day stuff, there's the weekly stuff, but at 10,000 feet, if I got to report to the board, what do they want to hear about? Like I pretend I have a personal board of directors because I come from big business. I've got that perspective. And it's not always a perfect analogy, but it helps me create that framework. Okay, if I had to report to my personal board, whose job it is to make sure I am successful as humanly possible, which includes taking care of myself and feeling good about myself and managing stress and anxiety, not just do, includes leisure. And what would they want to know about? How you doing here? How you doing here? How you doing there? So think about that. What are your systems? What are your systems? Now, stopping porn is ridiculously hard. I wish it wasn't. If I see another one of these, and I don't want to quote any one particular model, 21 days, easy this, peasy that. It's ridiculously hard, as I explained earlier. in this lesson. You don't have to do it alone. You don't have to feel hopeless. You can find someone out there. Maybe it's me. Maybe you want to evaluate, and because we have a 30-day money return policy. Say, this makes sense to me. I'm not doing these things. I'm not thinking about these things. I haven't been focused on these things. Because what you're paying for, whether it's me or someone else, I believe people pay me to do three things. People pay me, my wife, my company, the therapist that works for me, the other coaches that work for me, to accelerate their journey, right? If I'm not moving them quicker, I'm not doing my job. They pay me to deepen their journey. They want to go as deep as they can, because that's where the identity change comes from. You can't create identity change without understanding how you got here. Where did this flawed, broken identity of not being good enough comes from? They pay me to accelerate, they pay me to deepen, and they pay us to empower them to sustain. And, self-help is riddled with efforts to create these big, massive catharsis moments, right? How many of you here, by a show of hands, have been to therapy and had one of those catharsis moments, that the fireworks? But what do we know about fireworks? They're big and powerful, but they fade. And we're led to believe that this emotional catharsis moment was some kind of breakthrough. We've broken through. We're on the other side now, and everything's going to be okay. That is patently false. It being false does not mean it's incredibly valuable, but it is a stepping stone. What you've done is you've created a pathway for future healing, and you've collected data to manage this part going forward. Quick story, I have two clients who have visited Fiji Island, who have worked with one of the best coaches in the world, one of the most successful coaches in the world. They walked on coals. They were surrounded by the elite, by the experts, and they set these goals for themselves that would make you cry. I'm talking goals that would blow, they were so connected with their purpose. They cried half the time, and it was an amazing experience. But let's fast forward 3 months later, and they're more depressed than when they started, because they hadn't achieved any of these deep goals that they knew were them at the fiber of their being. This is their identity. This is their calling. And yet they're still stuck. Why? Because they did not focus on systems. Now listen, no one's paying $75,000 to go to Fiji to focus on accountability and systems. It's not sexy. It doesn't produce those big catharsis moments, but you know what it does? It produces results. Sustainability is everything, and you need systems to create that sustainability. Without it, you're doomed. So visit mindfulhabithelp.com, download our free resources, podcast, YouTube channel, and if you are ready, we have a program that's $99 a month with a 7-day free trial, 30-day money-back guarantee. We also have our group intensive, and I do a limited amount of one-on-one coaching. So take back control of your life, not just by quitting porn, but by creating the life you deserve. The most cliche and clickbait YouTube video that I have ever done in 13 years remains my truth. The cure for your addiction is the aggressive pursuit of a great life. I'm Craig Perra, and this is Sex Afflictions and Porn Addictions. It was a pleasure to spend this time with you. Thanks for listening. I got excited a few times today. I am obviously very passionate about these subjects. Not sexy, yet mission critical to you living the life you deserve. Thanks for listening, and goodbye.